What you have is people preaching their solution from a month ago and using that as a solution for this circumstance. I don't think that's fitting. I think it's unbecoming. I think it's quite hackish. And especially in a serious circumstance like we're currently in and have just gone through, we need to be a little more patient and find out what the facts are.
Find out what the facts are. The man you just heard from is Republican Congressman Patrick McHenry speaking at the American Bankers Association, a massive pro-banker lobbying group, as you can imagine. And yes, you heard him correctly. He thinks placing blame for the Silicon Valley and Signature Bank failures, for their collapse on deregulation is hackish. Now, he says it's too soon to draw conclusions. But he also forgot to mention that he's also heavily funded by banking association people there at the banking association. He takes a lot of money from those lobbyists, as was reported by The Lever. We're gonna get into those details in just a moment, Cenk.
Yeah, the amount of money that they give out to these politicians is astounding. So look at one quick thing here. When he says we have to wait, it's a trick, and I'm gonna explain exactly how that trick was used on me when I was an anchor on MSNBC, in that case to protect President Obama. But that is really important to this story. But in the demeaning way of saying, oh, hackish and unsophisticated and unbecoming, those are classic establishment Republican and establishment Democratic phrases meant to say any outsider who actually wants to help you is unbecoming and uncivil. Those are the tricks that are being played. Now more details.
So during this conversation, Representative McHenry is speaking to the CEO of the American Bankers Association. His name is Rob Nichols. And what they're discussing was the deregulation that took place under the Trump administration in 2018. Now, the deregulation was a bipartisan effort, and Donald Trump signed it into law. And essentially what it allowed for banks to do, these regional banks, these mid-sized banks to do, is essentially increase the threshold of assets within the bank in order to have extra regulation and extra oversight. So at first the number was about $250 million, $1 billion, my bad. So 250 billion, I'm sorry, 50 billion was the original amount. So once a bank has that much in assets, 50 billion, the original law would allow for extra stress tests and oversight to ensure that the bank's practices wasn't putting the country's economy in jeopardy. But with heavy lobbying by bankers, they managed to get that threshold to go from 50 billion to 250 billion. And so Silicon Valley Bank and Signature Bank were no longer worried about that extra oversight after they passed the 50 billion mark. Now, with that said, Nichols heaped plenty of praise onto McHenry during this conversation, especially for condemning calls for stricter oversight, because keep in mind, this is the American Bankers Association meeting. I mean, they don't want more regulations, they hate regulations, they just want to maximize their profits. So let's take a look at how that portion of the conversation went.
I appreciate your comments around 2155 because there have been, I think to your point of your opening remarks, some knee-jerk analysis already of what did or didn't contribute to this.
Let's establish the facts first, and then we can decide what kind of appropriate response we need.
We're in heated agreement, and I saw you make those very comments on Face the Nation just a number of days ago. Thank you also just for your thoughtful approach. The comments you just delivered about trying to figure out what happened and why, and then figure out what the path forward and steps should or should not be as it pertains to a legislative response is, I think, incredibly thoughtful. You've been called in the press the adult in the room at this moment, and so I just wanted to thank you for your leadership at this moment in time. I completely agree on some of the knee-jerk comments we've heard from folks. I saw an elected official the other day say, well, we need to make based on what just happened with these two banks, we've got to make banks safer, therefore let's just jack up capital requirements. I'm like, well, this is not a capital failure here. And then your comments about the overall nature of the banking system, I think, are really spot on.
But it was a capital failure because 100%. There was a run on the bank And Silicon Valley Bank did not have the capital necessary to make those depositors whole as they were withdrawing money. Now, Cenk, I have one thing I want to quickly mention, because this is the thing that's incredibly frustrating about the regulations overall, right? Even the regulations before some of it was weakened in 2018. So it is considered liquid, like liquid assets, if you have investments in treasuries. Why is that considered liquid?
Yeah, because you could sell them. But so let me explain.
Right, but the value can go down as interest rates go up, and that's exactly what happened here.
100%. But let me explain. So first of all, that guy that's talking there and giving all that praise to the Republican is a bank lobbyist. Okay, so and understand how this game works. In 2021 alone, that one lobby, in money that we can see, let alone the dark money, let alone all the banks themselves, let alone all the other lobbies, that one bank lobby gave $141 million to politicians. And yet mainstream media says, no, that's not bribery. They just care about people's health, the general welfare. Okay, absurd. It's out and out bribery. So I'll come back to him in a second. To answer Anna's question, that guy is 100% lying. It was definitely an issue about having enough capital. And he's lying because he's a freaking lobbyist for bankers, right? So here's what happened. So they have all these treasuries that you can turn what they call liquid, turn them into cash, because they're not a, for example, a real estate holding takes a while to sell. I got to sell that commercial property, it's going to take a while. The treasury you can sell like that. That's why it's considered what they call liquid, almost the equivalent of cash, okay? Now, the problem is when you sell it and the interest rates have moved, you can lose money on it. So let's say that they were worth $100 million and you sell them now, but now they're only worth $95 million. Okay, you got the $95 million, so it is cash, right? But you lost $5 million in that transaction, as an example. So now you've got a problem because you don't have enough reserves, because you're losing money every time you sell the treasuries to pay people who are leaving your bank. And what happened was word got out in the street that Silicon Valley Bank wanted to raise extra capital. And that's what set off the panic. Because everyone in Silicon Valley was like, oh my God, we all have our money in this bank. They're asking for more capital, that means they're in trouble. It was 100% a capital problem, 100%. And then everybody made a run for it, and then they definitely didn't have enough capital at that point, and that's why they went under. So understand that when you see people in suits and they look professional and they say demeaning and patronizing things to others, like, oh, you're the only adult in the room. No, they're huge liars. They're actors who are professionals at lying to you to help the powerful rob you, okay? That's who those two crooks are that you're watching there. And they get up in like bow ties and they look so sophisticated, but in reality, he's saying, let us just keep robbing you. We don't need to have much capital. Who cares if there's a run on the bank? The government's gonna save us anyway. We have this crook, Patrick McHenry, we bribed up the gazoo, and he now runs the committee. And be patient, I'll break down that code word too in a second.
I just love that he's a hack calling others hacks. I mean,
100%.
You're a hack, you are bought and paid for. I mean, come on. So let's get into who McHenry is. As I mentioned earlier, he is a Republican congressman, but he's a Republican congressman who serves a leadership position in the House of Representatives that he has no business serving in, considering the massive conflict of interest here. So he's the chair of the House Financial Services Committee. And he is bribed by banks like you wouldn't believe, including the banks that he's talking about during this Bankers Association meeting. Now, he has also, so let's get into those details. He received $275,000 in donations since 2013 alone from executives at Signature Bank, making him literally the top House recipient of their campaign donations in every election cycle since 2014. And it's not just Signature Bank. Let's take a look at this next graphic because it'll show you his top contributors. And as you can see, his top contributors include a lot of financial institutions, banks. You got Signature Bank at number 1, $275,150. Fidelity Investments, $149,700. Wells Fargo, $133,250. Google is the one thing that is a little different from the other contributors here. But then get right back to the banks. Bank of America, $117,999. That is to say that this is a man who is bought and paid for by the very banks that do not want to deal with any regulation. Because for them, regulation means we might have to follow some rules and we can't maximize our profits through incredibly risky behavior and risky maneuvers. And so what's frustrating is, look, we both agreed that when it came to Silicon Valley Bank, it was important for the depositors to be made whole, right? Because that would have spread across our financial system. There would be a run on many other banks if the FDIC decided against making all depositors whole. However, there was a big caveat that we talked about, and that caveat was regulation, right? There's no conversation about regulation. There's no conversation about re-implementing the already, in my opinion, weak regulations that were in place prior to the 2018 deregulation.
So that's why I said I want to come back to the words they use about being thoughtful, being patient, making sure you study the facts first for a long time before you do anything. They just wanted to get it out of the news cycle. So the example I'll give you on a completely different story is President Obama had given a speech about the Egyptian revolution, now obviously a while back when I was a host on MSNBC, and I was going to criticize him, and I said that on air. My producer got in my ear in about a second and a half and said, do not criticize him. I asked later why, of course I didn't listen, but they said you can't criticize the president right after he gives a speech. And I was like, wait, when would we criticize him? And is that true for all presidents? Could I have not criticized George W. Bush right after he gave a speech? This is MSNBC, I'm pretty sure I could have, right? And they said, no. And then and then I was like, oh, is it an hour later, and a day later, a week later? And eventually, basically, I got the memo until it's out of the news cycle, and then we'll tell you it's irrelevant, so don't criticize him, because we don't want you to criticize politicians, especially Democratic politicians, especially Barack Obama. But that's the same trick being played here. Oh, we'll get to it many months later when no one's talking about it anymore. They're not gonna get to it. They're not gonna actually study it. Everything you just saw there is a lie, and you would all know that if we had real reporters in the country. But instead, reporters look at those guys and go, that is the powerful head of the financial committee, and anyone saying that those hundreds of thousands of dollars given to him every single year are bribes is illegitimate and radical. He is an honorable politician having an honest debate, and that lobbyist is super honest too, because he's wearing a tie and he looks like us, the elites.
Finally, I have to also just talk about the American Bankers Association and their contributions to McHenry. So let's look at that second graph showing his top contributors. And at the bottom there, you will notice American Bankers Association, $105,500.
And then the lobbyist says, we're in heated agreement.
Heated,
well,
I believe it.
Couple of $1 million in total from all those banks. That'll put you in heated agreement, unless you're a mainstream media reporter, then the millions of dollars was just a coincidence.
Let's take a break. When we come back, we have a lot more news to get to, including a study looking into the demographics of AR-15 owners. Who owns AR-15s in the country? Some of the information here will surprise you. And later in the show, we'll have a little bit of fun and give you some updates on the Donald Trump indictment. We'll be back.
I'm a very stable genius.
You're about to watch some behind the scenes footage of the Young Turks. Ooh. Now these are partial videos. If you want to get all of them, you become a member, go to tyt.com/join. Thanks for watching the Young Turks, really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.